this book serves as both a cautionary tale and documentation of a possible man-made catastrophe that could surpass the devastation caused by the December 2004 tsunami. Pankaj Sekhsaria is an academic, researcher, photographer, and member of the environmental action group Kalpa Vriksh. He's a professor at the Center for Technology Alternatives for Rural Areas at IIT Bombay. Dedicated to addressing issues in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, he's authored 5 books on the subject and serves as the editor of the bi-monthly newsletter Protected Area Update. A revised edition of his book, Islands in Flux, the Andaman and Nicobar story, was also recently published. I now request Pankaj to share the short presentation with us before we proceed further with the Book Adda. Over to you.
Can we put on the lights? Can this be hidden, the screen? So we can see the... Yeah, just pull it up there. Yeah, good evening and thanks a lot to Vidhi for having this conversation and inviting me for this presentation today. This has been done jointly with Vidhi and Leford Books, so some of the copies are outside. I have a slightly longish presentation, but I'll crunch it just to give you a sense of what this project is and, of course, what the book is and what the concerns are. And you understand this? Okay. Is that okay?
Yes.
Again? Okay. All right. So I'll run you through about 15-20 slides, giving you a backdrop and a background to what the islands are, what this project is, and what the concerns are. And at every single aspect, the kind of in another report we did about a couple of years ago for Kalpa, which we called it a monumental folly. And I'm quite convinced that I'll be able to convince you of what the problems in this particular project are, and also what the book actually kind of puts together. So what we have, can that strip at the top, is it possible? ऊपर वाला strip जा सकता है? ऊपर वाला strip जा सकता है? नहीं जाए. Okay, ठीक है. So this of course is the book, and this is the island of Great Nicobar in the extreme south of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It's a 910 square kilometer island, pristine tropical evergreen forest, a very small human population of which an even smaller percentage is the indigenous communities, one known as the Shompen and the other known as the Nicobaris. And what you see in the map over here is from a 2021 report by something called AECOM India Private Limited in Gurgaon, which were contracted by Niti Aayog to make this proposal for this particular project. What we have... Next one. Okay. So what we have here is not visible, but there is a massive port project, a transshipment port at number 1. There is a airport project number 2. There's a huge kind of tourism and township, we call it a real estate project at number 3. And there's a power plant at number 4, which is roughly 72 to 75,000 crore. That's roughly $9 to $10 billion of investment proposed here. It started off in March 2021 with this report by AECOM India Limited, like I said, commissioned by the Niti Aayog to actually put this whole thing together. And the maps and the details that I'm showing you are partly from this report and then partly from what we have been documenting over the last 3 years. Just a quick snapshot for the island. Of course, many of you would know we are far away from mainland India. It's about 1,200 kilometers. And I was just thinking yesterday, actually, this tip, which is Great Nicobar, this island, is where this project is coming up. And perhaps from Delhi, where we are sitting, there is no further point geographically of India than Great Nicobar, the place that we're talking about. So it's really, really far away. I don't think there's anything further away from Delhi than Great Nicobar. So it's a great opportunity, but I think we also have a great responsibility. And I don't think we're doing a good job of that. But here are the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, spread between the Andamans in the north, the 10-degree latitude, also known as the 10-degree channel. And then on the southern part, we have the Nicobars. Roughly 8,000 square kilometers of area, 5 lakh people that reside here. And the island of interest, there is a lot fascinating that going about the islands, but the island of interest here, like I mentioned, is Great Nicobar, and what I showed you in the earlier map. And what also of great interest is this little star, which is just off the coast of Sumatra. This is of Banda Aceh. This is the epicenter of the earthquake of December 2004. So we are in the 20th year of that massive earthquake and that tsunami. And like we've written in the book and we've said it is, what is being proposed and what will happen is perhaps much larger in terms of destruction than what happened in the tsunami. Prashito, come this side, come in. Because if the more people coming, then maybe we'll have some more brothers. See, so this is, I just like to point your attention to this and I'll come back to this particular issue. Now the issues of concern, just to kind of put them together and give you details of this, there is the ecological dimension, there is a very interesting and important geological dimension, there is the issue with the indigenous peoples, there are concerns on the economic viability of that project, there are legal issues and there are issues of due process, which is something that we will be looking at. This is an absolute paradise, and I'm just going to give you some very small examples very quickly. 900 square kilometers of tropical rainforest, untouched tropical rainforest, with a large diversity, rare endemic species, threatened species, many not documented, any detailed, involved research project still is able to generate new data today when somebody goes and looks at that place. These are tree fern forests in the Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. The entire island is a biosphere reserve. There are 2 national parks. There used to be 2 wildlife sanctuaries. One got denotified for the project. I discussed that with you. One of the charismatic species is the megapore, is the Nicobari megapore. As the name suggests, in the endemic, it's found in only 5 or 6 islands in the Nicobar group, not anywhere else on planet Earth. And this landscape is full of species that are endemic, rare, endangered. It has a very interesting, there are many birders here, so I'm sure some of you may have already seen it. It's a very interesting nesting behavior. It's a ground-dwelling bird that builds a mound of earth in which it lays its eggs. It does not incubate in the conventional sense. It's also known as a thermometer bird because it's able to sense the right kind of temperature for incubation without sitting on the eggs. And it adjusts the material around the nest to be able to ensure that incubation happens. So just one example of the richness that it has in this place. And then, of course, there is a giant leatherback turtle. Of the 7 species of sea turtles, this is the largest, can grow up to 6-7 feet in length, 600-700 kilograms in weight. And the beaches of the Andaman and Nicobar, particularly the Nicobar and particularly Great Nicobar, are the most important nesting sites of the giant leatherback in the entire northern Indian Ocean. And the site where the port is going to come up has been documented to be the largest nesting site in the Nicobar Islands. Now, this is from the initial document of the project proposal. This is as you can see, the plan for the construction of the port. This is a 40,000 crore transshipment terminal, where the idea is that they will tap into the shipping lane that just goes south of this place, which is the Malacca Straits, and cargo will perhaps be moved up and out and brought to the mainland. So I just want to highlight the fact that this is an out-and-out commercial project. I mean, that's a very important thing to keep in mind. So what we have over here is actually very interesting because in 1990, this was proposed to be a wildlife sanctuary. This is the Galathea Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, Galathea Bay Turtle Sanctuary, primarily for nesting turtles. We have the giant leatherback nesting here in very large numbers. Latest figures, if I remember right, on a year basis, about 500 nestings have been documented in a nesting season over here, which is very, very large for the species. You find the olive ridley, you find the hawksbill, you also find the green sea turtle. Now, you have the river Galathea that enters it's a river by island standards, by mainland standards, it's a small stream. It enters here. Of course, the forest and the catchment and upstream are very, very special. They are also the home and the habitat of the Shompen community that uses these resources. So the Galathea enters here, and at the bay, there's this very beautiful 2.5 kilometer long beach, a wide, soft, silvery sands in which the turtles nest. This bay of roughly about 12 square kilometers, like I mentioned, was a wildlife sanctuary proposed in 1990, was never finally notified, which is the case with many PAs in this country, you would know. What's important is that the opening of this bay mouth is about 3 kilometers wide today. And here is a proposal. Obviously, if you're going to construct a port, you need to restrict, and stuff like that. So you have these breakwaters that are being built. where the opening will now be restricted to about just 10% of the original opening. So imagine a turtle, and as we know, the giant leatherback has been around from the time of the dinosaurs. It's that living fossil. Accessing the beaches is not going to be easy at all. Even if you, and this is in addition to the fact that once traffic starts, oil, water, sound, ships coming in and out. So will a turtle really be able to reach that nesting site? And why I'm pointing this out is because in 2021, in a meeting of the National Board for Wildlife, when this proposal came up for denotification of the Galathea Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, explicitly to build a port, not for ecological reasons or lack of ecological reasons, कि हमको यहाँ पोर्ट बनाना है, इसको denotify करना पड़ेगा. And on record, among other things, is the director of the Wildlife Institute of India saying it is okay. And they say the turtles, we will ensure that the turtles nest on this particular beach. So, I must say this, and I'll give you evidence of that. Our scientific system has been completely compromised. What are the reasons? I don't know. What are the compromises? I mean, what are the compulsions? I don't know. But we've seen this across the board. But in terms of due process, in terms of environmental governance, in terms of scientific credibility, and there's a serious question that gets raised when things like this happen. What's very interesting is, while on the one hand, as the director, he said that it is okay, and and they've done some proposal for the turtles. Before I come to that, what's fascinating about the turtles of the Nicobars and the Andamans? This is based on satellite tracking by the the Andaman and Nicobar Forest Department and the Dakshin Foundation. This is about 5-6 years ago. These turtles were seen swimming to both sides for 10,000 kilometers to the Australian waters and 12,000 kilometers west to the African waters of the coast of Madagascar. So these are real giant mariners. I mean, they are the ones who are traversing the earth for God knows how long. And they are nesting on these beaches, on that beach where the port is going to come up, is one of the most important nesting sites. And like I said, these islands are among the most important nesting sites in the northern Indian Ocean. The giant leatherback does not nest on the beaches of mainland India. So the only place where occasionally, I think 50s and 60s, they were the last records. You do see them off the water. Recently, if I remember right, off the coast of Andhra, I think they caught one in the fishing trawler or something. But otherwise, they nest only in the Andaman and Nicobar. So this is the massive, migrations that they make. These are the connections that these creatures make. And for very long, in academics, we always seen as oceans separating land. But there's a new body of literature which says actually oceans are connecting land. So oceans are not barriers; they are creating connections, and turtles are among the most fascinating creatures doing that connection. Now, this is how the process is. The best I can say is how we have been made a fool of. So, this is 19th of January 2021, signed off by the then Environment Minister. This is a National Marine Turtle Action Plan. Okay, the dates are important. So, in this document, which he signed off on the 19th of January, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and the Galathea Bay. Galathea Bay is listed as it's gone here, but one of the most important turtle nesting sites, and they are accounted for as the largest leatherback nesting ground in India. 15 days earlier, the National Board for Wildlife, in the same ministry, under the watch of the same minister, has actually denotified that bay, which is a sanctuary for the turtle, which is the most important nesting site, as accepted by a document of the same ministry, has actually denotified this. A year, 15 or 2 months earlier, the expert committee on the ecological sensitive zones has declared zero extent ESZs for the national parks here, with a very explicit articulation that otherwise the land is not available for this project. So it's quite stunning actually, on the one hand, but on the other hand, what's also very striking in this project is that all the paperwork is done. So it's almost impossible to say that the law has not been followed, but this is the way the law has actually been followed. And these are the minutes of the meeting of the National Board for Wildlife, when the director says that we do something, that the connectivity is maintained between the Galathea Bay. There was no objection of any kind. It was just that it's okay, and the land was made available and the bay was made available. And this is CRZ 1A. Again, if many people here from the forest found the forest working in the forest. So there are coral reefs here. There's a turtle nesting site. There are mangroves here. It's very clear in CRZ 1A that you cannot do anything. In spite of that, there is a proposal that we approved for this 40,000 crore rupee project. And as a matter of fact, in the NGT, when the matter was taken, they pretty much dismissed everything. But even in spite of that, they had to acknowledge that this is CRZ 1A, and they set up a committee to look at that. So a blatant disregard for everything that the NGT stands for. But even then, they had to acknowledge the fact that there's something and you can't just go ahead and do that. And this is the online, it is the RTI response from the WI actually saying in June 2021, we have not done any work on turtles in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. But of course, they have the authority to denotify the turtle sanctuary. So that's the ecological aspect. I'll just give you a couple of angles on the tribal reserve. We have these PVTGs there, the Shompen communities that have been living for thousands of years, small communities that live very remote forests. We know very little about them. They live their own lives, their own culture, their own systems. The entire island is a tribal reserve by a very interesting local regulation. And in the project again, you have this letter, and many of these kind, the direct to tribal welfare of the local administration. The very agency mandated for the welfare of this community, very explicitly saying that wherever any exemption from the existing provisions or regulations are required for the execution of the project, this directorate will seek the required exemptions. So that agency that has the authority and the power and the responsibility to look after these people is itself saying upfront that we will help you undo the protection, undo anything that is available for the protection of these tribes. It's due process is followed. They've gone to the ministry, they've done the minutes, they've gone to the EAC, they've gone to the National Board for Wildlife. So there are so many examples of on each vertical. If you look at the ecological, on the geological, etc., each one there is a problem of this kind. Now, when the project, now also just keep this in mind that this is a 900 square kilometer island with 7,000 people living today. The original proposal, ECOM proposal of 2021 said the population of this island will be 6 lakh people by 2050. That's a growth of maybe 8,000% in 25 years in that place. The total population of all the Andaman and Nicobar Islands put together is 5 lakh people. So what is, and how will they get 6 lakh people? And what will happen to the ecology, to the place, to the people? Nobody seems to have thought. When we raised objections, in the second version, they said, okay, it will be 3 lakh. So it's like somebody must have flipped a coin and the coin fell on the other side. So that's 4,000% increase in a small landscape over 30 years. Imagine what will happen to the relationships between tribal people and these people. Requirement for land, requirement for water, waste, energy, etc., etc., etc. And because somebody had raised concern, they said we will separate the settlers and the tribal people by putting barbed wire fences. So it gets worse and worse and worse. Now I just come to quickly to the dimension of the geological. That's very, very critical. That star that I showed you on the epicenter of the earthquake, you will remember this was 9.3 on the Richter scale. That is perhaps one of the biggest earthquakes in human history. The biggest tsunami in human history happened 100 nautical miles from the Nicobar Islands. From the epicenter, the distance is only about 100 nautical miles where this project is supposed to come. Why that's of concern is because the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are situated on the Ring of Fire. So this ring around the Pacific, where we know that the maximum number of volcanoes, earthquakes, the original tsunamis are all happening here. We are on that Ring of Fire. We know Andaman Island has an active volcano in Ladin Island. It is in this landscape where you have an earthquake once a week on an average in the Andaman and Nicobar waters. There was one earthquake yesterday morning. I managed to. So this is 5.8 on the Richter scale. It's not a small earthquake. This is the epicenter of the earthquake of 2004. This is Nicobar, Great Nicobar. This is the earthquake of yesterday morning. So we are in a landscape that is constantly rocked by earthquakes. And you are going to put in such a large project there. And also what's very interesting and not very well known is why we all remember 2004 for the tsunami. It is the earthquake that did the most interesting change. So if you look at my hand and imagine in the north is the Andaman, in the south is Nicobar, which it is, middle is Port Blair. And imagine a child seesaw in a playground. So one side goes up and one side comes down. So when the earthquake of December 2004 happened, the Andaman Islands saw an uplift of 4 feet that month. And Nicobar Islands and Great Nicobar saw a permanent subsidence of 15 feet. 15 feet of permanent subsidence happened that one morning in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. What is the kind of infrastructure you will develop on that coastline? And these are actually very interesting images. This is from a story I had done for the Frontline magazine there. And you can see here, plus 1 to 2 meters. As a very interesting picture, which I don't have time to show. And here you can see minus 4 meters. This is Indira Point, southernmost tip of India. And these are some, not of Indira Point, but of the central Nicobars. These are pictures of December 21, 2004, 4 days before the tsunami. And this is December 26. This is the evening of the earthquake and tsunami. And you can make out in Kachal Island in the central Nicobars, land that is visible, red that is visible as land above water is now underwater. So this is another 15 feet of subsidence that took place over here. And there is, so this is the kind of landscape we're talking about. And in a document in 2019 by WACPOS, which as you can see is a tender document for studying traffic for the transshipment port. Just as an example, I come to that, but this is the evidence of the change that is taking place. This lighthouse, if you see a picture today of the Indira Point lighthouse, the southernmost tip of India, like 6.5 degrees north latitude, this lighthouse stands in water. This is the same lighthouse before December 2004. This was so many meters above the high tide line. This now stands completely surrounded by the waters of the Andaman Sea. This is the evidence of the subsidence that took place. And in a 2019 document that I'm talking to you about, WAPCOS says, it justified the port here by noting that the topography of the island is best suited, which was not even damaged much by the tsunami of December. Actually got the date wrong as well, but we can grant them that. This should be 12. But this is the lies that is being told. And here actually is a report, this was something I wrote, this is a report from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, which is saying it is 3-4 meters of subsidence. So in spite of this, it seems okay to be able to go and construct there. I'm going to end in 5 minutes by giving you some examples of the shoddiness, the absolute, maybe it's a strong word, the criminality of what's been done in the EI report. On the left-hand side is the draft of December 2021. On the right-hand side is the final report of March 2022. And I'll give you a couple of examples that I guess most of us know here how poorly the EIs are done in this country. How much of a shoddy job they are, how much of a cut and paste, how much of a fraud they are. And it's explicitly visible in this place. This is from the text of the EIA, which on the basis of which this 70,000 crore rupee project over 130 square kilometers of the most pristine forests in this country have been signed away for a project. So they say, this is by Vinta Labs in Hyderabad. This is the official EIA. Some examples. Added to the problem was biting insects, including mosquitoes. Further, when one tries to look upwards to find out what tree it is not just one but many. Now, there was no threat of venomous snakes as they did not occur in the island. It was impossible to use any measuring devices like tape to make any quadrant in the forest vegetation. Hence, intensive survey was carried out on both sides of Campbell Indra Point for 4 days. It is about 45 kilometers and the entire stretch was surveyed 8 times in 4 days. This is the work on the basis of which the most pristine forest in this country has been signed away. Imagine the shortness of this, and this is just one example. There is plagiarized report, there is wrong information, non-credited, all kinds of things you can see in this picture. This is the basis on which we have signed away. This is the basis on which the EAC in the MOEFCC has granted environmental clearance. It's almost 2 years now. Couple of other examples. These are environmental conditions of the environmental clearance. Just one example. Trees with nesting holes of endemic owls to be identified and geotagged with the help from SACON. Such trees shall be safeguarded as far as possible. You have given clearance for the cutting down of these trees. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but it is in Parliament, the minister said it's 1 million trees, 9.65 lakh trees to be cut as part of this project in this mosquito biting forest. And we are all bird watchers here. How many of us have seen, how often do we see owls? How often are we able to locate the nesting holes of owls? And in a tropical forest with trees going up 100 feet in height, what is the hope that you'll find a nesting owl? What will you do with the geotagging? Because you've cleared it anyway. And what does it mean to say it will be safeguarded as far as possible? As an environmental condition for clearance. It is, it's absurd to the limit of, I don't know what. And again, there are many of this kind in the whole thing. And yeah, there's the kind of, after all the park karne ke baad, Ganga Snan karna hai, so 130 square kilometers of forest diverted or lost in the Nicobars. Let's do compensatory afforestation. So I think 2 months or 3 months ago, 260 square kilometers of land in Haryana has been notified as forest as compensation for 130 square kilometers in the Nicobar. We might have a new species. After having this sounds absurd, but I don't think after what I've seen and only a snapshot. I mean, I think our scientific community and our scientific bureaucracy is capable of finding a megapore. They might even shift one. Anything is possible. I mean, really, don't be surprised. So it's really tragic what's happening. And of course, you can imagine there is so much more detail I can go into. The nesting site, the most important nesting sites of the megapore are in the project site area as well. So again, you can just go on and on. So I'll stop there. Just quickly on the book, which I've been repeatedly saying actually is a call for help. We are lucky in the sense that we've been able to bring this together. There have been researchers on the ground. There have been forest officers just doing their duty, making the question, asking the question that they should, has helped us to bring this, that we can have this book, that we can have an audience, that I have the opportunity of bringing these concerns to all of you. So and it's very fascinating that Frontline, which is a magazine publication, has done the book. So I'm also deeply grateful for the editor there, Vaishna Roy, who has been really supportive. Exactly a year and a half ago, they did a cover package called Nicobar Nightmare that actually got a lot of traction. So the Constitution Conduct Group, which is a collection of very senior retired bureaucrats and senior officials, wrote to the president raising concerns. They've been writing regularly about the tribal issues, about the environmental concerns. And this is the kind of thing we've been doing over the last 3 years. Kalpagrish published a report, like I mentioned in the beginning, called Monumental Folly, which was a collection of the initial of my own writings and some documents. We did the Frontline issue. Then Sanctuary Asia did a very fantastic issue about a year ago, which was a special issue on Great Nicobar. And many of the stories from Sanctuary are also in the book that we just did a daily release yesterday, the Great Nicobar Betrayal. The other thing we did, and you might want to, if you're interested, we created a very detailed timeline of this project because over 3 years, it was impossible to keep track of everything that was happening. And there are maybe about 500 documents. And I'm quite sure that you won't find all of them even on the ministry's website. We were not able to find them. So we created a timeline on a day-to-day basis. So this is a timeline of roughly 200 dates where what's happening on every single date is available. And each of the dates is hyperlinked into actually giving you access to the original file. So project documents, clearance reports, RTI files, scientific reports. So if any of you are interested in getting more information, getting data about this, please feel free to kind of access this. This is available for free access. And this is the kind of timeline we've done. So for example, March 2021 is when AECOM releases the report. We have about 28 pages, and you also try to color code it. So each color is a particular kind of document. So I think these are scientific documents, or these are project documents in blue. So it just gives you a quick access and a quick run through for entire project. It's become a very useful resource even for us because we're not able to keep track with the kind of things that have been happening. I mean, I just must repeat that there are so many problems, including in the forest clearance, in the first stage forest clearance. There is no evidence that the Forest Advisory Committee ever discussed this project. When the project came up for clearance and when the clearance was granted, stage 1 forest clearance, there is 26 meetings of the FAC happened. There is not one record either in the minutes, leave alone in the agenda items, leave alone the minutes of this particular project. So something is going on that we are absolutely not aware of. So the book is a slim volume, only 100 pages. There was a comment on Amazon yesterday. I saw somebody said this is a complete cheap book. It should be priced for 50 rupees. Somebody is profiteering too much. So I think the book is slightly highly priced, but it's not so much profiteering. We have 4 sections. One is on the history of the project. Then there is a number of very interesting articles on the ecological concerns, including my colleague from Kalpabrik Shrishti, who wrote this very nice little piece asking if the turtle should go to court. And I think they should, or we should help them go. Then, of course, there are the story on the tribal issue, which is very, very important, very critical. These are people, like I said, have been there for thousands of years. And we have a 4th very detailed piece on the NGP, matter in the NGP. So Norma Alvarez, who many of you might know, very senior lawyer based in Goa, she written a piece, looking at how problematic the whole NGT approach was in this particular matter. We have a timeline in the project. This is what was mentioned earlier. I've been writing quite regularly, and we just published this new edition of this old book in 2024. So the two complement each other quite nicely. So that's about 30 years of journalistic writing. So it gives you a context of the historical, contemporary historical context on top of which we can locate the Great Nicobar project. These are some other books that are available. There's one book for children, and then there's a novel that I did. I'll stop here. I think I've taken more time than I was allowed. Debadityo, looking at me angrily. Thank you very much for your time and for this opportunity, and of course,
Thank you, Pankaj, for that overview of the issues threatening the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, especially the EIA report that you showed. It's really telling, and it shows us like our collective reluctance to face up to the reality of how climate crisis will affect our lives. We also have a special guest with us here. I would like to call on Dr. M.K. Ranjitsinh. Sir, could you please join us? Could you please join us here? Please come. Should I? Yeah, sure. So Dr. M.K. Ranjitsinh is a retired IAS officer, and in 1971, as Deputy Secretary of Forests and Wildlife in the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, he drafted the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. He also played a key role in launching numerous projects, including Project Tiger, Project Crocodile, Project Snow Leopard, and several other endangered species initiatives in India. He's credited with amendments to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 that placed a complete ban on the trade of wildlife species in India. In recognition of his contribution to the protection of Indian wildlife, the eastern subspecies of the Indian swamp deer is named after him. Dr. Ranjitsinh is also a petitioner in the M.K. Ranjitsinh and Others versus Union of India case, wherein he sought directions for the preservation of the endangered Great Indian Bustard, wherein the Supreme Court formulated a new constitutional right to be free from the adverse effects of climate change. We also have Debadityo Sinha, lead of the Climate and Ecosystems team at Vidhi. He will be in discussion with Mr. Pankaj and Dr. Ranjitsinh. Debadityo, please take it forward from here.
So, I was telling that when I started my conservation career, 10 years ago, and I've been part of several cases as petitioner also as a researcher helping them against big projects like dams, coal mines, power plants. And there have been many violations we have seen, and violations we should think that how can such violations happen? And when I hear you giving this presentation, also when I read your book, it's a fantastic book, and I think as you can just say that it has all kinds of possible violations that I have read, one have seen, one can imagine, and for me beyond imagination. This is the kind of project this is. And what makes Andaman and Nicobar Islands special, when I am a biologist, straight in zoology, I used to study since last, I think, and I have my own consciousness that level 12 when I used to study, that I used to read that Nicobar Island is not the global biodiversity hotspot. And we used to dream of going to this place to see the kind of, wildlife in the bit to see. So we say no forest is pristine, but I hear from people like Rahmani, Dr. Ranjitsinh from whom it is one of the pristine forests of India, but has become an island. And no one has been there to reach, and it is very few cases maybe hear about any news. One news I can remember is one person who went there to contact with some tribe, he got killed. The tsunami, and last I heard was from Pankaj only 10 years ago when I met him for this book, Identity Flux, that I mentioned all this thing. I was surprised because this news doesn't come to us, people like mainland India. This is one thing. And the kind and now we have project. Now we don't imagine that this kind of project can be even planned in this kind of no government can plan any this is what I think is, and the way it is executed, violations are there. It is very evident that both the science and law has executed this project. If you go by scientific logic, if you go by the law, it is clearly a project which has no justification. Any sane person will say, what is this going on? And you have given examples. But what is most important is that documenting such violations is injustices, speaking out loud, especially when you know the power you are dealing with, the kind of this is the government project and the kind of things happening, which I hear from people. It is a lot of effort, like a conscious, emotional, intelligent effort, a lot of sacrifices goes into it. So I think I really congratulate you, and also we should all be give a big applause to him that the kind of work you're doing, documenting this thing. And this book is a wonderful collection. I have read several chapters and by finest, the issues professionals. Curated by Pankaj, he has been working on the issue for the last 2-3 decades. I have only small feedback for this book. Feedback is that this is priced 500 rupees. Now, to be very clear, this book should have a discount rate. So my only request to Frontline, please publish this in some discount. At least the e-version should be in a slightly lower price, because there are people who cannot afford 500 rupees book. And it's a very important book. So this is my only humble submission. Now, also this thing sir was saying that he was studying, so I said right, join, and I just forced him to sit here because I also want to hear from him as well during the discussion. But before, I my first question to Pankaj, I read the book. It's a book full of disappointments, and I think if you see the list of disappointments, the various actors, whatever, and the Ministry of Andaman Forest is constitutionally it is mandated to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country, and the kind of disappointment Ministry has shown towards project is something like I have given the words to it. But also we have seen the kind of efforts to curtail the information, access to the island. I was talking to researchers, they were telling me that the access to islands was cut off without any official notification. That means someone from outside cannot go to the island, to verify information, whatever. And Parivesh portal, this whole information about this project was removed, saying it is a national strategic project. So, Pankaj, I want to know from you. We have been tracking the monitoring of Andamans much before this project was planned, and you have been advocate. What is the urgency? What is this urgency? What is this so national security which is compelling them to do this kind of from our own government? I know, and you were only talking about the law. You're not saying that you're against development or something like that. You're saying this is the law, this is the science. And being a patriotic person, I think you're talking about saving a national asset, a land of the country. So why is there so much violation? I can't understand. I just talk about it.
Only people in Delhi can answer that. I am fortunately not in Delhi anymore. But I just want to make one point. You just mentioned that in spite of the security interest. So I think I made that point and I want to repeat. This is not a defense project. So all arguments being made that this is important for strategic reasons. There might be good strategic reasons to do that. And we can discuss that on a different note. But this is an out and out commercial project. So why this is being done? What is the urgency? I really don't have an answer, except to say that this is not a new thing. if you look at go back 30, 40 years and various governments at various points of time, this is a very interesting location. You're sitting on the Malacca Straits, you are far away, you're expanding your reach. So all those, real politic of global geopolitical strategic interests, which I think in new situation at a completely different level, we have to rethink idea of what is security, what is international relationships, with climate change. I mean, the equations are changing and we can't continue in that old realm. So Singapore is the model for this. We keep saying we'll make another Singapore. In a session in Chennai, there was a researcher from Singapore. She happened to be there. And she said, "You don't know what's happening in Singapore. I mean, they're just so petrified with the rising seas and that they are going to struggle to survive." So, with all this put together, what is this large idea? Why is it being done? I have really no answer to your question of why this is being done. But the grandiose scale, the speed and the efficiency and the ruthlessness with which they have gone about doing this. Imagine this is 2.5 years old. I mean, who says Indian systems are not efficient? I mean, please ask them to meet again. Every single agency involved has coordinated. They've got everything done. So they've littered the crime scene with a lot of evidence to show that there's a problem. But I really don't have an answer to your question. That is going round and round, not answering the question.
Actually, Pankaj, we don't have the answer. So I ask maybe you have the answer because clearly the government is saying we are not going to reveal any information.
So that's our interesting thing is that there is a lot of information in the public domain. I think partly being denied, but I feel that when we say as researchers that there's no information, it's also partly the excuse on our part. I think there are ways to get information. Having said that, yes, for the last 1 year or so, all requests for information on this project have been denied under Section 8A, if I'm right. So it's a strategic importance, which it is not. I mean, let me say that again. But yes, in the initial part, we did get RBI replies, and the information is there. I mean, now some of it may be inaccessible or removed. And this is something that I have learned as a researcher over the last 15, 20 years through my larger networks and my teachers that document very carefully. So this becomes a repository now. And this is not somebody, it's there in the public domain. Nobody can say it does not exist. So the evidence of what has happened, we can take a position on that. We can say it's okay. But that the information is not there. So that has been a good lesson for us to put it together, which we should do, I think, for everything that we do.
So, Pankaj, moving on from government, now there have been 5 cases being filed. And this book also is mentioned there. And there's a chapter by Don, where it's very like a related chapter. It describes the chronology of events which happened in court. The way NGT heard the matter. This we have seen, it is very much like common practice, but because Andaman is a very high case, we have seen. And it has happened in my case also, one of the case. Like, judges, like, all this is there, judges get changed, this thing happened. And within 1 day, it was disclosed without even giving chance to the petitioner to argue the matter. Even the responses given by the government was not given to the petitioner. He thought even to the counter the argument. But very interestingly, funnily also, I should not comment on the courts. They have played a very good role. But in this case, we have seen NGT, the judgment commenting about national security, economic progress, and there is a whole argument given in the NGT judgment. NGT is a court which is for environment matters. It was to only see whether the environment laws are followed, whether the EIA has been done properly, the clearance has been given properly or not. The merits of the case have to be seen. But NGT, instead of going with that thing, they take a different tangent and they say that, some China's strong string of pearl strategy and India's act-east policy, okay, and development cannot be ignored. There's hardly any economic development in the island. No, first of all, I don't think court should comment on this kind of policy matters, especially when they don't have expertise. And my chapter has very strong word like about the expertise and of the judiciary, the judicial members and expert members. I think this is very bold also to write these things. Do we think, how to see this case, setting precedents for the future? We all know what a situation we are in, but because this is one of the topmost, the pristine forest and this kind of variations there. What do you think the president said, and for the next this kind of projects impact on the world?
Quickly, I think it's a serious concern, but as we know that we have to follow that process, and I have not been directly involved in the litigation with other people. And unless you go through the process of the AGT, the High Court, Supreme Court, we have to kind of follow that, right? Well, I do think there is hope. I mean, in the sense that There are people are concerned, the media has taken it up. And there is concern, it's no doubt there. As a matter of fact, this day before yesterday, the new Minister for Tribal Affairs had actually said we are willing to reconsider this project on grounds of the tribal rights and stuff like that. And there is this rising concern on many aspects of that. But I think in the larger context of why this is happening, I think also as a society and a country, I mean, maybe I'm sounding a little philosophical here, but it's not just the courts in a sense makes probably a reflection of what we are. So I think there is that deep concern, but also just what I want to add is this is not the only place we're seeing it. And with this whole geological challenges, and you look at what's happened in the Himalayas, and the role of the courts under the guise of connectivity, of development, of defense, the kind of destruction that is and the havoc that is happening in the Himalayas. We were just discussing glacial flow burst, sinking of Yoshimar. These are issues that are clearly going to repeat in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And here, because of the tectonic activity, the geological configurations, we have a very, very volatile and a very sensitive system. And the courts have to take cognizance of that, otherwise, we are creating huge trouble for us. And we're seeing this in the Himalayas.
From courts, I just want to hear from Dr. Ranjitsinh also. So, sir, very recently is getting busted because see, we're talking about the most specific forest of India. There is a most endangered forest, the Nicobar, and also the most endangered species of India's GIB, getting busted and part of the your extradition litigation. We have seen how Supreme Court, it was very surprise judgment, kind of it glorified the right of against climate change, which can be debated. But it clearly gave a observation that we have to compromise on the protection of. This is not clearly written, but if you read the language, it shows that court has somehow accepted that there will be impact on the wildlife, biodiversity. This is something which no one caused. So, sir, I want to know you from if you permit me to ask this little bit sensitive question. And we have seen this project Cheetah you planned 3 years ago. Now government is willing to bring cheetahs from Africa to revive the cheetah population in India, but there's clearly no political will to protect the species, Indian species in their habitat. So if we talk about the code, we are mitigating that. We have seen already. Do you think that courts are under the pressure, some kind of pressure, or they are just going with the majority view? So what is, because I have sometimes think that what makes the judges giving this kind of arguments, which are neither legal neither scientific. So
Thank you, Debadityo. May I take the liberty of first commenting upon the and if there is time, shut out. Want to talk about first of all.
He's talking.
Firstly, Pankaj, I compliment you for a very in-depth analysis and exposition of the problems. I would like to mention that you raised two fundamental questions here. One is about the Great Nicobar Islands, and I first spoke about that, and that's huge. The second is something general and much more fundamental, which is happening in this country, and which is not always. If you want, I can mention later on, but let me not monopolize the conversation. I would also suggest that at the end of what we discussed, we get a feedback from our colleagues here. They are also very committed. They have some suggestions. Okay. Coming to the matter of the Great Nicobar and the project per se. And I'd like to make certain comments in this regard and add what you said. But at the end of the day, what is it that we should be doing? This is very good, but if I may be rather crass, they say educating the educated. How do we change no matter what counts? Writing to the Chief Minister, writing to the PM, using it raising a public opinion that is going to help. I'm sorry, but no. While all this is very important, I'm sorry I have to be down to earth, but I have to be frank. What one is interested is whether we can do something, whether any of us can stand up and be counted. Because I believe that this is not just a question. It's a question of nationalism. Who is a nationalist? Who is a Shaheed? A man, a woman who sacrifices himself for the motherland. What about saving? I'm sorry, the ladies will forgive me. Saving the motherland from rape. Is that also not patriotism? What is the definition of patriotism? Somebody who sacrifices themselves for a cause to save the motherland without any particular gain or any gain to yourself. What have we to gain? What are we going to get out? Except that one is doing one duty. That is patriotism. I believe a true conservation is patriotism. God bless people who do that. One. Secondly, you talked about, I'm talking about a few different things. You mentioned about reports. The bureaucracy surrendered and became survival long term. Science has also become survival and are being now used as scientific input. And if I would only mention what is happening in the basket case, the kind of pressure people are being put to give reports, and the way the whole thing is, it is you said something which people give it at that time. Because this is what is happening in this country. And we are spectators of this. Okay. But coming to Nicobar, I don't want to waste people's time. Here, other things to do. What you said about the Great Nicobar, it is the greatest, and I have been very fortunate. I have traveled very extensively. I worked in the United Nations and I traveled all over Asia and traveled around the country. I have only seen one greater lowland dipterocarp. They've gone. Lowland dipterocarp forest, the greatest I've seen in Ujjainpura, which is the last surviving place, the Javan rhinoceros off the tip of Java. The second greatest is the Nicobar. It is greater than the Andaman. You asked me, you said something about the champagne. We should utilize the impact of the champagne, but they will been do this. You mentioned about the Nicobaris. Have the car Nicobaris come and settled? No. So actually, it's a champagne. There may be some Nicobaris who settle around that.
No, this is a different group of the.
Yeah.
No, this is Nicobar.
That is different. I'm talking about the great.
I'm talking. So it's a different group of the Nicobar.
The other thing is, and I'll come to that, this idea it is so, and this is very important. Some of my colleagues in the service say, sir, you are objecting to this way. What about the strategic report? As you rightly said, this needs to be highlighted. Strategy, what strategy? Okay, you may say that you countermand the advance of China, but not by this fault. You see, the Straits of Malacca, which we looked at, that's a different thing. Here, you are doing a totally commercial thing that needs to be highlighted. That there is nothing so strategic about it. It's not the game of chess, but a game of money. And I'm sorry, I'm being rather crass again. But you said this is not going to matter to the people. If there is a tsunami and that port gets left, we raise it again. More contracts, more money back. I'm sorry, but this is what it is about. Getting back. And you should be looking at who and how many Gujaratis get back. I'm sorry, I'm a Gujarati. But it's true. And I won't take it more names. So that is what it is. Indeed, it is with export. A few things, and again, please excuse me while I'm at it. Great Nicobar, you make great emphasis on the desert. Fine. The desert banks are very important, but it is not. I'm just telling you, this is not the greatest breeding color. It is in India, but not in the world. The eastern coast of China, Malaysia, that's where they breed. So they will change. You will not get much mileage out of that. It's the whole ambience. The megaphone is very important. The megaphone island population, the tsunami wiped out the megaphone. Yeah, it's still there. Incidentally, the megaphone is it's the only megaphone which has crossed the water stand. The water stand. You know where the water stand comes. That is what to stop even the tiger bird and so many others. But this bird crossed. It's the easternmost of that particular family, which is Australia. Australasia. The megapode being Nicobar pigeon. And and there are 4 species of Sweden. 2 in the Nicobar. Probably the Sumatran origin, but that is not true. But they have a separate subspecies of the white wolf. The Suspropha andamensis, of course, in the Andaman. There is 1 in the Little Andaman, and there are 2 in the Nicobar. They are simply very small because you talked about the domestic pigs and they are interviewed. So genetic swapping is one thing, but the total loss of biodiversity of this wonderful life. The greatest, apart from that one, in my considered opinion, the greatest lowland dipterocarp forest in South Asia. Like it's in the Great Nicobar. Now, and I could go on about its importance and the various dipterocarp species that we were able to stop that Gasi in between animals that it would get. And all of the stuff at that time, we stopped that saw that. Anyway, but we're getting good even from the Nicobar, that government and people who were involved with that. Wait, now, what do we do now? All this. What do we do to contract this? Just go. It's not good cut. So what is there in one has to do? I see no other way. If there are any other way of achieving the objective, other than just satisfying yourself by talking, but that's not going to see results. Because these people will go presently and do thing, and the kind of, as Gomez said, if you tell a lie 100 times, people believe it's true. And it's happening. So people are believing that this is necessary. Educated people are believing that this is strategy, this is contract. We need to publicize it. This is just, and it's not good. Now, so what do we do? There are 2, 3 dimensions to this, Marguerite. One is how to stop it? And what are the actions about other than the water problem? Public awareness and education, or the general need to just ask what, what is happening in this country and what should be doing, but that's a different matter other than Nicobar. What is about the Nicobar is second thing, and this is where it comes to brass tacks. If you won't get what you are aiming to achieve, which is to scrap it, what do you do to salvage whatever is possible? I know it's a Hobson's choice, it's an unpleasant choice. But if you can't get the whole thing, then what will we do? What do we salvage? What do we save? Conservation, like life, is the art of the possible. Conservation, like life, is also compromise. So, ये नहीं करो, ये करो. इसके ये करो, ये avoid करो, ये. And then comes the Lakshman Rekha, the Rubicon, which cannot be crossed. ये नहीं कर सकते. But I have always found that there are alternatives. It's just that we do not want to do those alternatives because it's going to cost, and we do not want the project authorities to be stuck there. One thing about the Great Indian Bustard, if you take 200 kilometers of the line underground, 180 to 190 kilometers of line underground, it will cost us 200 crores. 16 companies in 1 year earned a profit. 16 out of the 104 companies earned a net profit after paying taxes of 2,600 crores. 2% of CSR will be enough to save the bustard from extinction. The government is not forcing them to do that. I'm getting worked out. So you are up against that odds. And the government is not siding. And you know how much they pay these companies and others in electoral bonds. That's a trade secret, it's a national secret. That alone will save so many species. The CSR money is going into all of this. The CSR money is also going into the biggest zoo in the world. So that's a study. It's CSR money, not, and that's private, not private money. But that. So this is the issue we are facing. Now, so we have to also come to, and let me not see this. You mentioned about the Himalaya, and you mentioned about, I'm also involved with Prakriti there and some of the others in on the worst thing that any government has any done to the forest nature of India, the amendment of the Forest Conservation Act. I'm convinced it is the worst thing that will be done. You know that the Andaman and the Nicobars are within 100 kilometers of the international border, and so are the Himalayas. The Indian Forest Act, but and destroyed is not going to apply. You will not require any such thing altogether. It's outside the purview of the act. It's being excluded. Again, in the name of strategy. 100 kilometers from the boundary, the act will not. The amendment. So, what are we talking? I would strongly suggest that we take something and we work out something. How would we move from there? And if legislation is the only recourse, then so be it. Let's stop both there. Otherwise, we can satisfy ourselves and say we've done our bit. So, Thank you.
taking the conversation forward, I think you answered a lot more questions I had wanted to ask. These are very.
My problem is that once I have this thing I talk to.
I know that. That's why I give it to my. I'm not giving this back to you. I did my like I reduced my own job. So.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, sir.
Carry it.
Actually, all the things you said, I think this, what this itself said is very important. Connecting the dots, how an amendment, as I said, Delhi mein डाल दो क्या हो रहा है? Things happening in Delhi in the parliament. And we know how this FCA got approved last year. Bulldozed the parliament without single debate. The opposition worked out. So we cannot blame the government. We can also blame the opposition. They are there in the parliament when this Delhi, the ordinance was being discussed. But when this whole FC Act and this was discussed, no one was in the parliament. So, this kind of questions we also need to ask people. And I had more questions, but I think we are running short of time because I wanted some his Ranjitsinh sir's view on the political regime and all this thing. But I think before I open it for discussion with the audience, I have just one last question from both of you. We talk about the accountability of the government. We talk about the accountability of the institutions, the judiciary. But now we all know these three things are media. The media in this case has been it is Hindu and the thing that okay. One change which I have seen personally, you may disagree with me, that we have a history of very good history of wildlife organizations, which are doing research, documenting, and talking about raising issues, technical issues. I don't want to name any organization, but really, disappoints me as well because there are very premium organizations. But you all know, only last couple of years, there was a OM by University said that Wildlife Institute of India cannot publish a single document without the approval of Minister of Wildlife Forest. Now, the academic freedom of WI is finished. I don't know what happened to the OM. I'm sure this solid ZSI and all this institution, and they are all independent, so we can't expect them to be giving independent reports against the government or the government survey. And we have seen these reports being used to justify such collapse. In this report of Cyril mentioned how WIA, ZSI, these reports are used to say that, how should we utilize it. But what about civil society? What are organizations who are not even speaking against this kind of, I think, you should bear the wildlife conservation if you cannot talk about a species for getting extinct, talk about the only distinct forest of the India from, I don't know what conservation we are going to do. So, Pankaj, and also, sir, I want to ask you both. How do you see the civil society, interaction with this kind of decisions? And do you think there is some change in the perception of the response of society? What is where you say total community you have? Because this is something question which I always we discuss, but no one speak about this.
Just quick, there is a lot of hope and there is possibility. I think last few years have been difficult for GNC. People have been wanting to say things that they have not. But I think if we can reach out, if we can inform, if we can engage, then I think there is a huge amount of possibility. These are people as real as you and me. I mean, there's no reason why they don't have the concerns that we do. And with the changing environment, with larger awareness. And as a matter of fact, if you see the last few years, among the most active on many of these issues have been in particular ways, social media. A lot of the young have taken up a lot of these issues. So, of course, there are challenges. Also, in a world which is changing so rapidly, our consumption is increasing. But I'm not willing to write off anything, even whether it is the scientific institution, whether it is the political system, whether it is the bureaucracy, whether it is all of us. I think if each of us keeps at it, like all of us do, then it can only get better. I mean, it has been a bad time, there's no doubt about it. But we have to keep trying, and we can only hope. I mean, that's the best we can do, and we can do what we can do. And I think there will be a turnaround. We will see better days. I mean, that's all I can say.
My only concern is today something is happening, and if only you want something first talking about this.
There are many fires we are fighting. It's not possible for everybody to be involved everywhere. Each one has their own struggles, individually, personally, institutionally. So if each one of us is able to do a few things, I mean, there are so many challenges for society and country, not just the environment. So I think आज जो कर सकते हैं वो होगा.
Sure. One last question to Ranjitsinh sir I want to ask. So sir, my question to was continuing this that you have seen at least 4 or 5 decades of conservation. Like when this whole EPA Act and Manipulation Act was being drafted, you were part of the drafting of this Manipulation Act. So how do you see the political regime? Because see, we can't say that this government has been against doing this thing, because we have seen bigger projects like Tehri Dam or bigger things things happening. But now on the stage of social media and we have more access, so these issues are now we can do coordinated. So in your experience, how do you see this whole political regime and the civil society? This interaction is evolving. Just like as a observer.
Very quickly, this has happened uh, since 1980. It's not the present government, it's a growing trend. And if I may say so, people may or may not engage with the Forest Rights Act. One of those things within the movement. But anyway, and that was another government. The interesting thing about India is that conservation, and this is unfortunate, but it's true, comes to the top rather than to the middle. We are very conscious, but maybe rather away. We keep our house clean. We don't try to keep outside our house. There is no great movement, and we have to create it. And unless that is done in a democracy like ours, this will always be. Has a single political party in the last election great one in parliament? Any party? No. It doesn't matter. It doesn't feature in politics. It doesn't get you any votes. And therefore it doesn't matter. The politician is only interested in the next election. I'm sorry to say it. So this is what it is. And you and I, we have to do something to create it. It's not easy. That means okay. So that is the scenario. And it's very interesting. I've written something about it in my book. That during my first tenure as Director of Wildlife, 86% of our protected areas were the hunting reserves with the Maharajas that were protected. And they preserved those areas because of the selfish interest in shikar. But in the process, you save the habitat, which is more important than the animal. So that was one part of the story. And this process, and the greater demand, the greater the monolithic thing of one party rule and the Congress at that time, even Mr. Gandhi and the others, if they had been in the presidency, but they had that basic interest and that purposely it down. I would go around and say, I would tell my minister who wanted a forest secretary. My minister wanted the areas within their own constituency denotified centrally. I said, sir, ये तो गेम के पास है. तो ये वो था. Whether that would have happened now, I don't know. But that was there. It came always from the top, unfortunately. And as the people took the signal, I would tell the chief wildlife warden, भैया इस सेंचुरी बना दो, हम पैसा दे देंगे और फिर हम करेंगे. I give you one example. And I'm sorry that. So this is the thing. And I'll take a minute. Dudhwa National Park. My great friend Vidhi Ranjitsinh would go and hammer and song billion, and he had me here. Mrs. Gandhi, I put up a note. She wrote to the chief minister, and we got a letter from the chief wildlife warden. At that time, the chief conservator. UP said we will declare Dudhwa as a tiger reserve and a national park, provided the government of India reimburses us 85 lakh rupees per year. 85 lakh rupees is a lot of money. My salary will about 2,000 rupees. Anyway, so that was, I just put up a note. I put up a note and say, the PM I've written to this is the, I didn't say it, sir, so this is the unacceptable report thing. The PM is yeah, but bottom line made all it. After that, my boss, the IG Forest, the Global Mark, the ICS officer, Secretary Agriculture, Fakultaniali Amasab, Global Mark. In 3 days, I get a phone call from that same man saying, okay, that thing. We are waiting to work. She just, when she saw that letter, she just picked up the phone and that woman and the chief minister had it. Yeah, that is it. I'm sorry, but it's true.
Yeah.
So ये आपका जो हुआ, लेकिन ये इसे but at the same time, what do we do now? Yeah,
Maybe, on this note, we open a session. So any questions, suggestions, most welcome. Don't worry the time. This is here. So,
it just take this away.
I want to know what are the legal challenges to remaining in courts as far as they are.
It's very much there. I mean, it's only as far as the NGT at the moment. So there was a challenge on the environmental clearance. And I would disagree with Dr. Saab in terms of FRA and stuff like that, because probably in this case, between the FRA and what rights the tribal people have might be one very big opportunity in this case. And there are other cases where actually forests have been protected by the Forest Rights Act.
Oh, yes.
So there is a difference of opinion there, but that is one avenue to explore. So these are also not processes in our hands completely. So it's been before the NGT almost for more than a year now. They sent it back, then they constituted a committee. We don't have the report. So, like Dr. Saab said, maybe the courts are going to be one recourse, and there are hopefully people who are taking it up. Like I said, there are 2 petitioners in the NGT already. So we'll have to see. It's also about finding the right kind of people who will be petitioners. We need the legal backup. We need resources. And the hope again is with the larger interest and a spreading awareness about the issue, maybe there are other voices that also come up. So specifically to your question, I think there's a long journey to kind of, maybe too long, but lots of options are open and we will have to explore.
Recently, they said nothing much has been done on the ground as yet. So the other things so far.
The place is a very,
If we can do something through the
Absolutely.
recourse,
Absolutely.
we can gain something.
Because that place is a very difficult place to work.
That's the whole problem.
So
That's why I was just telling that had it been somewhere and we could just happen. Just like it nothing gets.
that is good, but on the other hand, it's also a difficult place to put up the kind of infrastructure they want. So it's going to take time to make it happen. So that's a possibility,
Nothing has been done apparently so far, which is a good thing.
which is an opportunity.
and also if you ask a question, we'll also take a feedback. So sure. Also.
My question is for Pankaj.
Also, please tell us who you are. Yes.
I'm Vidhi. I work in urban ecology issues in Delhi. So all the resources you've put together are great, the timeline, the book, everything. But most people in the public domain will not have the time or inclination to go through any of that. And this is part of, the suggestions. Is there like a 2 or 3 minute video? Have you ever considered that? Which could reach out to people, and it may just build up some public opinion if nothing else. And videos have a way of going viral. And I don't know if that will do anything, but that's a possibility to just let people know about what's happening. Because you said, I also thought this was a commercial, a defense project. I didn't know it was a commercial project until today.
I think it's a fantastic suggestion, and a little bit of, we also have to get the right kind of people. And so again, my hope is with all this kind of awareness, somebody will kind of pick it up. So just today morning, there's a bunch of students from Flame University who have written saying we want to do something. So I don't know what they want to do, but things like that. So, but I must just say that just last week, there's a very nice comprehensive short note by the Indian National Congress, which is worth reading. It's a statement by Debadityo Sinha, very compelling note on why they are not supporting the project. It's a really quick, it does not go into any great details, but it makes a very clear statement. And that would be something, if you just, I think, go to Twitter handle, you can see that. So there's a nice point-wise thing on what the project is. But you're right. I mean, a lot of stuff of that kind is required, and there's slightly longer videos of presentations I have made. But yes, the answer to your question very simply, yes, it should be done. Sure.
Yeah. We are very pleased, very whatever publicity that you give, 3 dimensions could perhaps be useful. One is the effect on the poorest of the poorest and the tribal community. That the topic here over the graduates on the head, because they do get affected and their livelihoods are. So that aspect needs to be highlighted, first of all. Secondly, I'm sorry I have to say this, but is in this battle sham down done great something. So the second aspect is religion. So the religion is becomes so important. And the Mandir in Ayodhya is not the only religious site in the world. So, what about the oral, the sacred oral of the Vishnu? What about the sacred groves of the Dindos in Meghalaya? And there are other the sacred groves in West Bengal. And there are other areas where religious sentiment can be brought in, and religious sentiment is a very important component for communication. I've written a whole chapter about it, but that anyway, so that is the third. And the third, which is very important, in this country of Gautam Buddha, Mahavir, and Mahatma Gandhi, do not be voiceless, and the citizens of India don't they have a right? The animals and birds of India, they have an equal right. They are citizens of India. And if you're talking about Antodaya, what are those? Gandhi said that this is what I'm trying to keep in mind. Whenever you take a decision, keep in mind how it will affect the poorest of the poor and the voiceless. Aren't they the poorest of the poor and the voiceless? They also matter.
So, ma'am,
Oh, but that is different. But at least verbally you are playing tribute.
please go ahead.
My name is Andaman, and then the person I'm working close contact with these communities of Andaman and Nicobar Island, especially the Jarba, the Andamanis, and Shortfits for the past 2 years. So, as Madam said, the ground of the short videos is around 10 years ago. Survival posted a video of human safari of Jarbas. You must be knowing it. Back also
Safari of Java.
Yes, sir.
They took people into Java country.
Yes. No, about the human safaris on the Andaman Tragules. Yeah, it was raised, but
Are they going to take safaris to the north secretaries also?
now it is going on now, madam. Yeah, it's still going on. No, it was banned by
honest.
through industrialization, been going on for around 2 decades. Second, because of that, smuggling and other impacts, they're affecting the indigenous tribal groups. No national news agency is allowed in Andaman and Nicobar Islands to operate. No researchers are allowed to operate. Last study of anthropologists, it was in 1978, I guess, if I'm right. And after that, it's in 2012, Dr. Sahani's report. So, also, like Sir said, the politicians and the other government officials, they are not sensitive to it. Sir, we ourselves are not sensitive to it. Andaman and Nicobar Islands are a hub for producing areca nut, and for that, they are
Oil palm.
areca nut, sir.
Oil palm.
Yes, sir. That also. And for that, they are encroaching the forest around 50 acres, 100 acres. And every family is getting a profit of 25 to 30 lakhs per year. So it's not just the administration. It's us. So that was, and I
Forest be there for planting.
yeah, yes. Because the mere negligence, it's not actually negligence, madam. It's like the system is not allocating resources for impactful interventions. It's like a corporate facility, minimal investment and maximum profit. It's like,
Think it
yeah,
gets being
yeah,
taken
exactly.
part of the planting and stuff like that.
So with all the issues which were loudly for many years, they're still persisting. There have been no betterment.
Yeah. So is there a question or is there a point you want to make?
I just like to
Oh.
add to it.
Oh, sure. There is a question that side. Krishan, you also have a question? Yeah, we'll just come back to you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, this is Akanksha Mishra. I'm from the Trend. I actually had a technical question for you, Pankaj. So you mentioned the EIA, the Environment Impact Assessment. As far as I'm aware, for an EIA, you also need a public hearing and you need to take permission of the people, the local communities. Given that it's only tribal communities that reside in the area where the port is being constructed, how was that process followed? Were they consulted? Was there any?
Well, that's a damn good question. And again, it's a bit of an ambiguous area in terms of. So what the other thing that happened was the public hearing happened during COVID, and so in the book there is information on that. Plus, if you look at the timeline, we've uploaded the videos of the public hearing and all the processes of that. Now there is this issue of representation because who's going to talk for the Champagne, for instance, and the authorities have kind of said that it is okay. Although there is a record a couple of years ago, video record by, and I think it's there on the timeline, by anthropologists Vishwajit Pandya, Manish Chandy, and all. They were asked by the Niti Aayog to do a survey, and there's some sense from the Champagne saying, leave us alone kind of thing. But a very interesting development there has been with the Nicobaris community, and I'll just take a minute to kind of explain the thing because this was a community that was very badly affected in the tsunami. They live on the coastline. So they lost a lot of lives and then they were moved to resettlement sites. And they've been wanting to go back. And the book has 2 or 3 very detailed and very painful essays on the state of these people today because they're now ridden with alcoholism and all kinds of challenges. They want to go back to their sites and they've been denied access because some parts of the original habitat is going to be in the project area. So initially the Tribal Council of Great Nicobar said a yes. And very soon, and now it's a matter of public knowledge, they wrote a letter withdrawing their consent. They had given an NOC to the project. They have formally written saying that we withdraw the NOC because we did not know the implications of this project. So the entire letter is there as an annexure in the book. So, and it's also there in the public domain. So this question is, again, it seems to have followed the process, but what does it really mean in that remote place to do that? And then, of course, there are all these other challenges. But I think that's a very important point, and how to get the representation of these people. And as a matter of fact, as of today, there is another discussion going on a social impact assessment for the airport project. And here again, there's a draft letter that's circulating, and I think might actually be submitted today or tomorrow because they were not following the process of doing the entire time frame in terms of which publish should be allowed. And there are questions of what's going to happen to the Champagne habitat and stuff like that in a very small part of the project, which is the airport. So it's kind of being managed, if I can, that's the best I can say. Yeah. And then,
Yeah. So, thank you very much. Pankaj, I wanted to ask you. Yeah, I'm Vijay.
Yeah.
And my question is to you. Have you engaged with any of the think tanks, right-wing think tanks? I think there is going to be.
No, so we've not. I mean, I've not engaged with anybody. It has been a 3-4 year process of just digging out information, and it has been a public outreach. There's been largely an outreach through the media where I am concerned. I have not approached anybody directly, whether political parties or think tanks, either behind doors or otherwise. So at a personal level, it's been in the public domain and raising that public domain. So I mean,
are you open to it?
I don't know how to think about it. I've never done that. I'm a little scared of going and meeting people in park.
Okay.
So it was Everything you finish and then we can come back. Wait.
Thanks so much, Pankaj. This is such an important work and really good work on environmental governance, especially. I want to just follow up on the tribal council of Nicobar. Like, after they gave the NOC, what happened? Like, was it treated? Where does it go to? Who takes account of these complaints?
So in the environmental clearance process, it is the Andaman and Nicobar, the pollution control and the forest department, the environmental governance system that takes charge of that. And then it goes up the hierarchy, and that's where it's done, and then the environment ministry gives the clearance. So in the case of the Nicobari Council, I think there were researchers, some people who were in touch with them who had a conversation with them to tell them of the larger implications of the project. Otherwise, they didn't really know much. So this whole thing of also informing, and if you look at what are the requirements within the public hearing and the environmental governance process, where it should be published, where it should be available, how much time should be given, all these things are there on paper, which often again don't work. And where is the newspaper in Great Nicobar, for instance, even if they have to do it? So all those questions kind of happen, but all of this has been done in that sense, if that is your question.
Yeah, that's my question. And the follow-up would be like, what is the particular interest of the state in terms of, bringing these development projects or tourist projects to islands? That seems to be like quite on the uptick right now. And is there any mobilization at the level of, these tribal councils or tribal groups, people who are in touch with them, in terms of protecting or having an island imaginary at the environmental discourse level? Like, Himalayas are totally different from islands. That is something that's happening in Hawaii. My collaborators in Hawaii, they are totally like, we need to think about environmental governance and climate change very differently. It is not based on nationalist boundaries. We cannot talk about Himalaya and Nicobar at the same breath, in the same breath. Maybe we can talk about Hawaii, Singapore, and Nicobar in the same breath. So are these kind of conversations happening, because you're so entrenched in environmental?
So there's a lovely point you're making of the imaginaries of what an island and even what development should be. So I think this idea of this massive mega development project is relatively a new imaginary. I think it's scale for the sake of scale. Because we can do it. In 2009, I'll just give it as an example. In a defense seminar in Port Blair, 5 years after this biggest tsunami and earthquake, the former president, late President Kalam, in a defense seminar in Port Blair, in his vision for the islands, articulates a need for a 250 megawatt nuclear power station in the islands. So exactly, what is it going to serve? What will you do with so much power? You don't need 250 megawatts. So there's something about the imaginary, I don't know what it is. To your second point, there's a very interesting dynamic is that the non-tribal populations there are happy with the project. There's a very interesting local dynamics which we have to kind of consider. They look at us, they look at the voices from outside as being anti-development. I said, you sitting there, you faraway people enjoying life, why do you want to deny us? They are important stakeholders, and we can have a different opinion, but they are there. And there's a context to why they are kind of asking for what is happening over there. So that's another thing to be kind of considered. Where the other discourses are concerned, when you're talking about the tribal people, they're talking about 700 people. Many of them are not accessible physically and language and culture. So where is who's going to talk to them? What is the possibility of real meaningful conversations, equal conversations, which is all very required, but the kind of input, kind of people, kind of commitment required is a lot more is required to be able to have them as part of the conversation. And to the best of my knowledge, it's very needed. There's a huge need for that. But in considering access and stuff like that, that's a much larger challenge. So people are not even aware of the geological reality of that you have experienced that kind of change. And then you want, because 2 feet of change will make that economic project completely unviable. And in conversations with people who are, say, in part of the education system in Port Blair, when I presented this whole, what happened in the earthquake, most people did not know. They have seen their land submerge. They suffered because of that in Port Blair, but they're not really aware of the larger dynamic. So there's a huge gap of information. And the imaginaries are created of a Singapore, of a Hong Kong. The former chief secretary of the island writing publicly saying, why do you want to protect 1,000 square kilometers for some 500 tribals? This is per, look at the density of population in Delhi, look at the density of population in Singapore. ये land में तो आराम से Singapore बन सकता है. This is the former chief secretary of the island saying this publicly. So that imaginary, that imagination that we talk about is very much at play.
To it. I was talking to researchers and who are directly interacting with the tribals there. Telling, explaining to them what is EIA, what does outsourcing consent mean, what is the airport, even what is this kind of structure means to them. So basically, and they are people easily trust, like someone comes from the government, tell them, why don't you give a consent? So by the time they realize what ho sakta hai, for them you have to understand from where they are coming from. We are privileged to have this kind of understanding. Very difficult, even the other person explain what is. This next question.
We quietly raise his hand.
Just one point, a short point in a suggestion for the audience, because we are having a discussion on EIA and public participation. There was a UK Supreme Court judgment delivered a week ago. It's a 100-long page judgment, and the UK Supreme Court has dedicated almost 20 pages to what EIA actually means, and they have interpreted it as not giving a permission for a project, but it's actually a tool of public participation. So I think that is a very good reading for the audience. It's 20-25 pages of EIA and public participation.
So I'm just adding to that. If you like,
Take the mic, take
the mic. Just also. Indian Supreme Court has also given such wonderful observations in many judgments. If you read the kind of philosophy, kind of thesis they write, what matters is the operative part judgment direction what they give. So even if we read the judgment in Indian courts, we will be fascinated by the kind of academic record they put in but the direction so hai. So we should do this, please.
Yeah, thanks, Pankaj. I don't have a question. It's just a little offering. There was a conversation this evening about raising awareness. Someone talked about videos. In 2019, I made a series. By the way, I'm Krishnendu. I'm in the conservation communication for the last 2 or 3 decades. So I made a series of wildlife guards, 6-part series, sponsored by all the leading environment conservation institutions, as we talked about, also Discovery. One of the episodes was in Andamans, and we were very lucky. We got an egg-laying sequence of the leatherback in Jahazi Island and of hawksbill. So what I can suggest, I can cull out some footage from my stock, and I can make very short videos, 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, and put it out. Somebody has to really get on to the job of using the social media, because I really believe now, I don't look that age where I believe in social media, but that is really the way to go now. Get it viral. I can make a 1 minute video with a lot of data, a lot of beautiful drone shots of the white beaches, of some of the shots of the egg laying of leatherback. And I think it can be quite nice with some hard data, what's happening. Yeah.
Thank you. Go for that. Yeah.
My name is Anita. I have a question about the technicality of the project. Is it possible to build an all-weather transshipment port at that point?
I don't know. I mean, I guess technology can do many things today. So technically, it may be possible. I don't know. I mean,
but some of the shipping channels are shut for some months of the year, from what I know.
So that, I mean, if I might not answer your question, is that I think a real critical, technical, financial, economic study of that project needs to be done. And all these questions might actually then come up. There's a lot of, as a matter of fact, yesterday there's a very interesting op-ed in the Indian Express by the former chief of the naval staff, Admiral Arun Prakash. And he makes a very interesting points there. He says, let's decouple this from the strategic point. That's the first thing he says. And he also makes the point about the economic viability, saying with so many transshipment ports, even on the Indian mainland, whether this is going to kind of work. But these would be important questions to ask, because this has not gotten that part of the best of my knowledge. It's still, getting the clearances done, and then nobody's asking those questions with parameters. But these might be very interesting and important questions to bring into the discussion and the debate. There's a question at the back. There's Shoaib in the front.
Hi, I'm Anita.
Yes, sir.
So, Pankaj, I have two questions.
Yes, yes.
I'm Anuragini, and I come from a social behavior change background, which is why the suggestion I want to make is from that perspective. I've been working in this development sector for about 25 years. You know, like Sir said, we are all sitting the converted, right? And when I speak to a lot of my friends who belong to whatever corporates, they have no idea why do I keep talking about the Nicobar or wording or whatever. We are talking about social media here. And when we talk about social behavior change, one of the biggest reasons that change does not happen is that we don't relate to. We don't know what it'll do to me. And in the social sector, what we tend to do is to stimulate, right? So if something is happening in the Nicobar Islands, rest of India is actually not going to be concerned unless there's an effort made to show that when this happens, this is how it will affect you. I mean, most of the people here have been talking about climate change for the past 30, 40 years. Now people know what it means. So my simple request is, AI is a wonderful tool. Virtual reality is fantastic. There are organizations who can help, and Krishna Bose has already offered to give those videos. I can look for organizations who do that. I'm volunteering my time to say, is that I can definitely contribute by finding those people. Make an effort with that. So that's a suggestion. Thank you.
So I think that's okay.
Sorry, I keep picking up on something one of you said earlier about why do you think there is this coupling of tourism and islands suddenly? And I'm going to, of course, we know what's going on in Lakshadweep, and in fact, I was part of something that we put together petitions, we written to a lot of people, all of which went unheard. And we can do a similar exercise again for this, of course. And I'm very happy to help amplify if the videos are put together, very happy to amplify it through whatever channels I can. But in your opinion, why? What is it that is suddenly, because we've seen, it's not the first time that people have conceived tourism projects in the island. I know somebody went with one of our prime ministers and set up the first Lakshadweep project. People from CGH are there, and I've spoken to them personally. Seemed like a very different time, with a very different objective, and a very different. There were problems there as well. But why do you think now, at this scale, what is the motivation?
I don't have an answer to why and yes, but it's not one. I mean, like you're saying, we're seeing this at a very multiple places at multiple scales. So, and maybe there are more experienced people here who have some idea of what the explanation of that might be. I mean, I might want to say delusional, but maybe that will be too much. It's too strong to say. I can't think of any plausible, sensible reason why. But there is this thing that we will be big and we can do it better and we can do it bigger, and we are this, superpower of various kinds. So I think it's into that imaginary of we can do big and we can do it better than anybody. I think that is the kind of imaginary that is driving this. I don't think there's anything else.
Yeah, or at least
Next question, please. Then we will tap this.
Hi, sir. I'm Ayush from Vidhi Center. I'll make a segue from what we have been discussing. My question is not exactly related to the project, but it's about the saltwater crocodile, for which the most primary habitat is the Nicobar Islands. So about 6 years ago, there was a proposal for delisting the saltwater crocodile. And surprisingly, it was coming at the behest of civil servants from the tourism industry. So because you have seen that habitat so closely, I would like to know your insights, your thoughts on the entire episode that happened.
To be honest, I'm not sure of exactly the episode, but you're talking from the island, or you're saying generally for the delisting from the.
There was a general proposal for delisting, but my understanding is that it originated from the Nicobar Islands.
So what happened in there are 2-3 things that have happened in the island. One can look at a little empirically. In the last few years, there have been a lot of reports of crocodile attacks. It could be a function of more attacks. Two could be better reporting. And there might be a linkage to the changes that took place after the earthquake and the tsunami, because that coastline really changed very rapidly. And then there is a growing tourism as well. But also, all of these are, the numbers are certainly higher, but these are also very high profile cases. So, you see a lot more and you hear a lot more about what is happening. So there have been concerns, also suggestions that you take a crocodile and relocate it and all that, not realizing that they will swim back and things like this. So whether there is any logic to that and whether it was driven by that set of incidents that happened in the islands, I don't know. But I do know that there has been, and I think the Down to Earth and others did write about this, that there has been a increase in the number of incidents reporting of crocodile attacks on humans. It could also be to do with bad disposal of carcasses and stuff like that. But something of that kind has happened where there's a change in the ecology because the coastline of these islands have seen a drastic change after the tsunami. It's 20 years now, but it might have made habitat suitable for that particular animal. I don't know. But how that might be linked to the delisting proposal and all that, I'm not really in a position to say much about or anything about actually.
So I also want a response from Ranjitsinh on this aspect, and also including notes from him. And then we'll close this.
May I ask a question in reply? All around the coast of Australia and somewhere else, you have shark attacks. Do we destroy all sharks? Do we delist them and make them vermin? Look, this is the whole point. If you increase tourism and they are there, the saltwater crocodile, and of all the crocodiles in the whole world, they are the most. They regard it's like great. So what is the option? To put up a notice board that don't simple. Vegetation. Poison destroy all saltwater crocodile. One. Second thing is, if you are having a resort, the only option where the saltwater crocodile cannot come. The saltwater crocodile lives in mangrove area. The saltwater crocodile is not like a dugong or like a shark, which can go very well. They have to have certain places where they live, they have their being, they breathe. And the mangrove area. Cannot we avoid areas around the mangrove and not save them? Are we going to keep only those animals and birds and everything else where there is more danger? You are encroached on their area. You be everywhere. Is the safety, you can avoid those areas. There are other regions. So, if there are the thing, it should be the responsibility of you. Like I said, like so many other places where there is danger. Do you have to go around in the national park at night where there are elephants? And if an elephant attacks you, you kill the elephant.
Thank you, sir. That answers this question very well. So I think we're already on time. So I will request Shashank to give a memento to Pankaj with a small briefing book we publish every year. Okay. Also, Ayush, if you can give this memento.
What have I done?
This is also a book, sir. This is also a book. So thank you everyone for coming today. And this will be also uploaded on the YouTube in a couple of days.
Do consider getting a copy of the book. I must say that at the end. It's okay if you don't, but please do consider. And please do reach out. I mean, in any ways that these conversations are very useful also to me. And hopefully you will do more. That's what I think. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.